Hello, I'm Adam Meixner, and this is Crafty Polymer Projects. I'm absolutely thrilled to be on the channel. This marks the beginning of an incredible journey that I get to share with my father, and we cannot wait to show you what we have in store. But before we dive into this collab, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've been interested in fantasy art as far back as I can remember. I've always loved sketching, especially wizards and creatures. Over the years I gravitated to 3D modeling, and that eventually led me to game design. In fact, for nearly a decade, I've had the pleasure of working with a company called Zojoi, where I've had the great honor of working with legendary game developers Dave Marsh and Carl Rulofs. We released Shadowgate VR for the Oculus Quest in October of 2021 and are currently deep in development on Shadowgate VR 2. More about Zojoi, Dave, and Carl in a future Shadowgate themed video, so don't miss that one. Now let's rewind a bit. Back in 2014, I created a range of 3D models for a miniature tabletop war game called Aether Steel by O2 Games. One of the factions in the game are the Legion, and I immediately loved the aesthetic. Grungy post-apocalyptic World War II era soldiers mixed with ancient Greek and Roman clothing and weaponry and accessories. Among the various models that I created for Aether Steel, this is one of my favorites, the Legion Riflemen on a BMW R75 motorcycle with a sidecar edition. I printed this as big as I could on my first resin printer a few years back. There was an issue with the wheels, and the bottom half of them failed in printing. But Dad came up with the idea of creating a polymer clay base, making it look like the bike was plowing through the mud. He sculpted the muddy base, it saved the print, and I had a lot of fun putting some color on it. So in this video, we're going to scale up this design. My dad is going to sculpt the polymer clay base, and I will be 3D printing my motorcycle design and painting it. This larger version took about 6 hours to print on my Anycubic Photon M3 Max. It's about 6 inches from tire to tire. Other than some sliding on the wheels and a missing elbow on the sidecar Rifleman, this print turned out great. Very happy with it. Now that the print is finished, Dad can get started on the base. He starts out by shaping a wire mesh into the form of a gentle hill, then bulks it out with some aluminum foil, making sure it's pressed together tightly. He rolls out a strip of white Sculpey clay for a base layer, and he cuts that into a few strips to cover the top, sides, and bottom of the base, making sure to cover the entire hill and blend the seams. Now he rolls out an earthy brown strip to cover up the white layer. He's blended in some darker and lighter browns. There is also a very fine metallic flake blended in, which gives it kind of a grittiness like real dirt. These little flakes catch light and add some great detail. He selected some choice rocks from around the yard and starts cutting in and placing them. Dad gets crafty here. I was wondering how he planned to do the vegetation. He cuts blades of tall grass out of zip ties, which apparently can withstand the temperature of the bake. Also, the zip ties have some lines or teeth for the locking mechanism, which adds a bit of texture. I'm digging it. Here, he carves some tire tracks into the mud, and the sidecar tire as well. He baked the base at 275 for 15 minutes. Looks awesome. Nice work, Dad. So I could have parted this model before printing and then glued it back together. It would certainly make the paint job easier. But I think for this project, it saved a lot of time and frustration to print it whole. It was also a fun challenge for the printer. I started out with a black base coat. I let that dry and then I add another coat. I make sure to get the paint into the narrow, occluded areas. The black paint works great as shadow in these areas. This paint I'm using is Magic Fly airbrush paint. I'm only using a paintbrush on this project, but I've tested it in an airbrush and it's very good. These little 1 ounce bottles go a long way. also like that it dries fast and it's very rich and opaque. I recommend for sure. Decided to go with a navy blue, black, and chrome color scheme for the motorcycle. Overall, I'm going with muted colors on the Rifleman. Here I paint the Rifleman's helmets, elbow pads, and armor. Dad easily repaired the missing elbow with polymer clay. He shaped and baked a tiny elbow guard and glued it into place before I started painting. Moving on, I used some brown paint for the boot leather, M1 rifles, rifle straps, and the sidecar Rifleman's backpack. I also went with brown on the seats. One of the iconic features of the Legion Riflemen is their Spartan-style red capes. Took a few coats before I found the red I was looking for. I do a lot of chrome and gold details off camera using these Artugan brand metallic paint markers. The gold I used on the lead Rifleman's helmet face guard, a few pocket buttons, and their boot eyelets. Here I paint the helmet fins red, which I think plays well with the red capes. Wasn't sure how I wanted to do the headlight, so I painted it with a little yellow and white, and I still didn't care for it. But then I added a little plastic covering, which looks enough like real glass, and I think that's about the best I can do with it. Here is the finished piece. I want to thank Rob and Greg at O2 Games. I loved working with you guys on these models. Aether Steel is a robust miniature war game with rich lore and lots of great artwork from many artists. If you want to learn more about Aether Steel, links are in the description. I want to thank my dad for starting the channel. Me and Dad are very close, best of friends, best bros, and working on the channel together has produced some of the best memories I'll ever have. Thanks, Dad.